Hi, I'm Trina Lee. Welcome to MGig. On this show, we speak to well-known musician Steve Hadley, live music supporter and councillor Andrew Bond, and we get the local goss from Munster Times zine creator Matt Ryan, and later on our feature story with Jack Howard from Hunters and Collectors. But first, Paul Higgins, the general manager for Empire Music Studios and Studio 52. Early in the year, Paul built new sound studios, but before he could open them, the pandemic hit and everything was cancelled. Hey, Paul, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Tarina. Thanks for having me today.
Pleasure. How are you? How have you been?
It's been a weird time for everybody. But pretty good.
Yeah. I guess I want to start with a little bit about the studio and what you do at the studio, sort of prior to Corona, anyway, because it's put a halt to a lot of things. Do you want to give us a little brief?
Sure. Well, I've been in the recording business for 34 years now, mainly running studios in Collingwood called Studio 52, but that we closed that last year because that building is being renovated or developed into apartment block like everything else in Collingwood.
Yep.
And we built new studios, much bigger and better, brand new studios in Heidelberg. But we essentially finished the main, most of the building just prior to COVID hitting and all the restrictions coming into place. So just as we were about to have our first open day, all the restrictions came into place. So we haven't really been able to show anybody much.
Yeah, that's a massive blow too, considering it's been
Yes.
working towards opening.
All the work we had planned to do has been put on hold and probably won't happen until next year.
Yeah, which is a massive shame. Do you think the government has done enough to help the studios? We talk a lot about venues and musicians at this time, but there hasn't been a lot of mention on how the studios are coping during this time as well.
Sure. I think studios get left out of this debate regardless of whether it's COVID or any other time. I mean, we're always talking about musicians and venues, but nobody talks about studios. We're sort of a forgotten, and the same with a lot of people that are involved in crew or other aspects of the business. Studios are obviously a big resource to the music industry. But yeah, we tend to get forgotten.
Yeah. Do you think there's more that the government can do to help you guys during this time?
Look, there's always more that could be done. I mean, obviously, even when the government has helped out with a lot of different things for certain industries, you can't replace 100%. I mean, at best you're getting about 10% of what you'd normally be doing. I mean, we've been lucky enough to get JobKeeper, and we've had some other assistance, but yeah, I mean, it's about 10% or 15% at best of what we would normally be, turning over during this period. So yeah, it's not. It helps, but it's not going to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And so we're having to borrow more money. My business partner and I both took out money from our personal super. There's no way you can get through this without us all losing. We're all going to lose something.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long time to get back to where we were before.
Do you think with all this that it's going to change how the music industry operates?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of changes. I think people are going to. I mean, luckily, people are pretty smart in terms of adapting. I mean, we've seen that with all of the live streaming type things, but a lot of that hasn't exactly been profitable or money making. It's been a way of keeping in touch with fans and so forth, but it hasn't. It's pretty hard to monetize that stuff.
Yeah.
And like a lot of these things, a lot of those things work if you're already famous, or if you're already a big name or a celebrity, or with a major label. But I mean, for a lot of people who are just, relying on gigs to start out or to get known or just to make a living, that those things don't work unless you've already got a name. So, there's lots of people doing, live streaming, but nobody's watching.
Yeah.
The ones that are the big ones are being watched, but those people are already famous. So for up and coming and grassroots artists, I think it's a really difficult time. It's always difficult, but it's even more difficult than usual. I think that the changes people are going to have to make is they're going to have to be more intimate showcase type shows with small audiences. They're going to have to do different things and have different models, and probably have to charge more for the show.
Yeah.
Whereas up until now, people, most of the money is made from drinks over the bar. In a venue situation. So, there's going to be a lot less people. If they can't put 500 people in a room, then if it's 100 people instead of 500, then maybe they're going to have to pay 5 times as much to be there.
It's important, I think, at least prior to Corona, with these venues and getting paid for gigs. A lot of the bands, that's how they get their money to pay to get into studios as well, to record the stuff, to get it out there.
Sure.
So,
studios, doing it tough way before COVID.
Yeah.
So, and musicians are obviously were broke even before COVID. A lot of the time, it'd be great if the Australian government, generally looked at the arts like the Canadian government. I mean, there's a lot more investment in the arts and in culture in that scene, and that's why the music industry has been so successful in Canada.
Thank you for joining us and sharing some of your thoughts on the situation. I hope the studio can get up and running soon.
Sure. Well, I mean, our biggest problem was that, as I say, I've got an interest in the youth and area. Is we run a project called Cool Schools, which
I know the one.
We're usually recording about 30 albums at this time of the year. We're normally fully booked doing work with young people, about the age of 16, 17.
Yeah.
It's an original music project. We had all those school projects were put on hold because of the no excursion rule. So even though the schools are back now, we still don't know when they're going to be able to come and do those albums, because we don't know when they can actually have excursions. No. Even though our environment, as I say, we've got 1,250 square meters here, so we can have plenty of people in the building without any issues,
breaking any laws.
So we just don't know. Yeah, we just don't know whether it's going to happen this year or not.
Yeah, that's such a shame, because I remember Cool Schools being such, it's one of those first sort of, all the kids that want to get into music, it's one of their first sort of steps into being able to learn about making music, producing music.
Yeah, this is its 24th year of running.
Yeah.
So, hopefully the government thinks it's a good thing to get us to run it nationally again, like we used to in the Howard years.
Yeah.
Because it used to be funded by the Howard government nationally, but that fell off. But maybe the youth ministry will think this is a good vocational music opportunity that they could promote nationally again.
Yeah, I think it would be important.
Way of addressing.
It would be super important at this time as well to, get all those kids back into music and not let it drop off.
One of the things I think that's going to really change for studios is if people can't travel overseas. If you think about it, a lot of acts, both large and small, have recorded overseas in recent years. Either Nashville, LA, London, wherever you like. A lot of records have been made overseas. Now, maybe those records are now all going to have to be made in Australia. So maybe that work will come back to studios like mine, or all the other studios around Australia, rather than people recording overseas. So maybe that will be a good thing for the local recording scene.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that will be part of it. I think anything that brings more focus on the local scene and local musicians. I mean, if it comes to radio playing more Australian music, that's great. If it means more recordings are done here, more focus on Australian artists rather than international artists for a little while, that would be good too.
Yeah, well, I think we're kind of forced to do that for the moment anyway, but it's definitely a positive out of a negative. I see that.
Yeah, well, I hope, that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
And
nice to talk to you.
You too, and stay safe. Steve Hadley has played in bands such as the Black Sorrows, Paul Kelly and Professor Ratbaggy, Stardust 5, and has also had stints with Kate Sobrano, Men at Work and Christina New, just to name some. Hi Steve, thanks for joining me.
Hi,
How are
good
you?
to be here.
Great to have you here. How have you been?
Pretty good, under the circumstances.
Yeah, understandable. I want to ask a little bit about your career in music. You got a long, successful career in music. Do you want to give us a little brief on where you started? And
I started pretty young, sort of with my school teachers. I sort of played in their band on the weekend at high school, kind of when I was like 15.
Teachers' band?
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Music
interesting.
teachers, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they, I suppose I was doing two gigs a week when I was 15, 16 maybe, and then they got me into music school.
Yeah.
To the VCATs, which is the College of the Arts Tech School. So you do maths and English, and instead of woodwork and sheet metal, you do music, And I went there for a couple of years and then went to the tertiary side of it and did a music degree. And all throughout that time, I just sort of been doing gigs in, my friend's garage band and some dudes that played in the restaurant up the road and, my teacher's band and all that. And then just sort of started playing around town and just in little bands and stuff, and then sort of got into sort of studio work. So I became a bit like a session musician, so I'd play on films and jingles and people's records. And
Playing guitar?
bass.
Bass, started with bass, yeah.
Double bass and electric bass is kind of my thing.
Yeah.
And then the first kind of touring stuff I started doing, I suppose, in the early 80s was with Vince Jones and sort of jazz kind of thing. So we'd, go and play in Sydney and Perth and Brisbane and all, Melbourne and all that. And then I joined Kate Sobrano's band when she had a big record in the 80s and played on and off with her for decades. And then during that time, I sort of ended up in the Black Sorrows and played on and off with them for decades as well, and so on. Just lots of different bands and lots of recording and playing on records and just basically,
Yeah.
that's what I do. Yeah. And got into record production and film music and all that sort of stuff.
What were you up to prior to Corona, I guess, coming in and shutting everything down?
Well, I was pretty much fully booked till Christmas.
Wow.
Which is how you do it, especially if on the bigger shows, like they take a long time to kind of organise. You can't just sort of go, we're going to do the Palais next week.
And rock up with your instruments.
You got to spend 6 months kind of working, promoting it and, getting it together and all that kind of stuff.
And all the logistics behind it. It would be a big operation, I imagine.
Yeah, so when it first happened, they shut all the big stuff down. And then we're going, okay, so we won't be doing that, and that's, such and such a show, blah, 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 That's all gone. So, we can still do our $100 gigs up and down Ackland Street or Fitzroy, whatever, like everyone does when they're in town. We all do, you go and do a gig with your mates in some bar and you get a couple of free drinks and maybe a meal and $100 or something. I mean, I was getting $100 in a gig in 1979. And it just hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Which is, that's another story. But then, 24 hours later, they shut all the pubs down. So because I thought, we'll get by, do a few more bar gigs, whatever.
Yeah.
And then that all stopped the next day. So then it went from fully booked till Christmas to nothing overnight, basically.
And having no clue when it would start up again.
No.
Either. That's something also like that a lot of people spoke about post-lockdown, is that they imagine we're probably not going to have the opportunity to go see a free gig once music does start back up again. I think there's a talk of, we're going to be paying entry door fees to get in, and there may be a lot more than what they have been prior, purely just to keep these venues alive and have enough to keep musicians playing.
I don't know. Unless you're doing ticketed shows, how you because these free gigs, like bar kind of gigs that we all do all around Melbourne, all around everywhere. I don't know how you could just sort of start charging people. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's really unknown at the moment.
And the ticketed shows, especially the bigger ones, it takes 6 months to organise them. You know, like you can't just sort of go, oh, we're going to do the Palais next week. You got to promote it. You got to make sure you fill the room. You got to do all that kind of stuff, which takes a lot of time. So even if things do open up where you can have a capacity, it's going to be another couple of months before you can actually do a show. You know.
Yeah.
So if things sort of open up soon, none of us can really make any money until halfway through next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like we've all been frozen in time, sort of thing. There's like a whole online presence at the moment for music. Do you see that changing the way that musicians interact with fans? And
I reckon it's probably it's gonna be a part of it from now on.
Yeah.
Like for example, some friends of mine did one of those live streaming shows on the weekend, and no audience, but it goes out over the net.
Yeah.
And they had people from all over the world kind of commenting on it, and oh, I'd love to be there to see that band, blah blah blah, or they're fans of the band but they live in England or something, So that's kind of a good thing, I reckon.
Yeah, it's a positive out of the negative, for sure.
And if people, I know people are donating and, watching stuff and going, oh, I'll give them a couple of bucks, whatever. And they can sort of watch the gig from home, and we've been doing that kind of Zoom thing where we sort of get together on Sundays and we're all in our little houses,
Yeah.
But it's like we're all, we're together, but not physically, but, like and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
So,
it's a bit of fun. There's a local band that just put out a track recently, the Mercy Kills, and they their whole film clip is just like as if they're on a Zoom recording, just them in their house, just doing all sorts of random stuff that I'm sure we've all been doing during isolation, going a little bit slightly mad.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of fun.
But I think that all that stuff is a kind of good thing, added on to what we already do, like live shows. But, the streaming thing is, you can actually, hopefully we'll have full venues, but as well as do the streaming thing, so people who can't get there or that, can watch it on TV. I reckon that's cool.
Yeah, that hopefully will be an added, an awesome added element to the live music scene once we do kick off again. Thanks for joining me, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
Andrew Bond is a councillor for the City of Port Phillip and supports live music. This includes help with the noise restrictions in St Kilda prior to the pandemic. Thanks for joining me, Andrew.
Thanks for having me in.
It's a pleasure. How have you been?
Yeah, going well. A little bit wet outside, but glad to be inside here where it's certainly much warmer than it is out there on Fitzroy Street.
Yeah, it's a traditional Melbourne winter day today.
It's a welcome to winter day.
Yeah, definitely. First, I wanted to start off by asking you, how important is the local music scene to yourself and to the community here?
Look, the local music scene is very important to the people of St Kilda. It's probably the traditional home of live music in Melbourne. I think we've had or still have many of Melbourne's most iconic live music venues, from the Palais to the Espy to the Prince of Wales and a number of others that are around. So, yeah, I think we've got a really good, vibrant live music scene here in St Kilda.
Along with, we've got the St Kilda Festival. That's a big one.
We've got the St Kilda Festival is massive for St Kilda. We get somewhere between 400 and 440,000 people from all over Melbourne, and all interstate travellers as well come to the St Kilda Festival. It's great for local businesses. It's great for the live music scene. The council has done some economic benefit studies that shows that particular festival puts $26 million into the local St Kilda economy and a little bit more into the rest of Victoria, which is important for our businesses down here in St Kilda. For most businesses in St Kilda that do open on that day, it is their largest trading day of the year. So it's St Kilda Festival, very important for the local area.
And you've had a bit of involvement creating also the parking spots that we have now at some of the venues for the musicians, the loading spots.
Yeah, a few years ago, a local resident came to me with an idea to say that, it'd be great if we could do something to help musicians who they have a lot of equipment, and instead of lugging the equipment from wherever they can find a park into the venue, or double parking and risking a fine from the local council, who are very good at doing that. They came up with the idea that if we could convert the underutilised loading bays out the front to musicians' parking bays, and we could issue a musicians' parking permit, so that during the day that any loading or unloading that needs to happen for the business can occur, and then at night, when generally the bands are on, the loading bay is available for the musicians to park there and unload their equipment. And pleased to say we now have musicians' parking zone signs up outside the Espy and the Dogs Bar and the Prince of Wales and a few other venues around St Kilda.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
Yeah, look, it's great. It's a small thing. There's little or no cost to council, but it makes the task of playing live music in St Kilda just a little bit easier for those that have to lug their equipment in and out of the venues.
Do you want to give me an idea of what it looked like prior to lockdown for the music scene here in St Kilda? I know we've sort of struggled with noise restrictions a little bit here and there. St Kilda's an area that's growing in population. There's a lot of development happening here. There are a lot of people moving into the local area. And as a result of that, there's always conflict between live music venues who have been here for a considerable period of time, and residents, both new and old, who move into an area and want to have the quiet enjoyment of their home without listening to the music. So that provides a dilemma for council, whereby we're the ones that have to go and investigate. And under the Local Government Act, every noise complaint is required to be investigated. And just because we're investigating a noise complaint doesn't necessarily mean that council believes there is a concern. We're just fulfilling our obligation under the Act. It is often a difficult situation. There's a law called the Agent of Change law, whereby if a pub or a venue has played music for a long period of time and someone moves in next door, it becomes the responsibility of the person who's moved in to alleviate the noise. Whereas if someone wanted to start up a new venue next door to a long-term resident, it would become the responsibility of the new venue to alleviate the noise. So there are laws in place to decide how we do resolve these conflicts between residents who want the quiet enjoyment of their homes and venues who just want to play a bit of music in their area. How do you see sort of the survival of the local music scene after lockdown? We've got running the risk of losing some of these venues as well at the moment. Do you have any suggestions for some of the venues as well that might be struggling?
Yeah, we run the risk of losing not just our music venues, but a lot of our businesses across all of St Kilda and across all of Melbourne. This isn't a problem unique to live music or unique to St Kilda. There are businesses are going to struggle. They have a bit of uncertainty at the moment. They don't know exactly when they can open. They don't know exactly when they can resume with their live music programs as they did pre-COVID-19. So it is tough for businesses operating in this vacuum, but hopefully we're starting to see signs of venues reopening, of restrictions being lifted, and the venues can, in a very short period of time, hopefully we'll see them all come back out the other side of this stronger and able to operate the way they were previously.
Thanks so much for joining me today.
No, thank you for having me down here. It's been a pleasure.
Jack Howard has been an integral part of Australian music history for decades. Playing trumpet for the Hunters and Collectors, Epic Brass and the Long Brothers, he has also played alongside Tex Perkins, UMI and the Violent Femmes, just to name a few. He is labelled as one of the great quiet achievers of Australian music and is the only trumpeter inducted into the ARIA Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I was surrounded by a lot of music at home. My younger sister played piano and she played a lot of Debussy, whose music I really love, the colours of his music I really love. And then kind of got to know, Stravinsky and more 20th century stuff. when I got to study as well. I guess all of that kind of stuff is what I really love. And then Miles Davis, I guess, tangled up in there as a specifically trumpet thing. But that whole kind of really lush, romantic, melancholy, powerful kind of music of those kind of composers, beautiful orchestrations, things like that. I guess that's the stuff that I really love. The rock and roll part, I suppose, of my trumpet journey started not far from where we are right now, at the Seaview Ballroom in 1981. I'd been doing journeyman kind of trumpet stuff, playing around in local musicals at the National Theatre, Sweet Charity, West Side Story, Man of La Mancha. Great fun. Really loved all of that stuff, and also very seriously in orchestras and national music camps. I was in the Australian Youth Orchestra, the Melbourne Youth Orchestra, went to national music camps, big grounding in Mahler and Stravinsky and Beethoven, all the rest. That's kind of what I loved. And then I was doing a music degree at La Trobe, which was a very kind of avant-garde kind of course compared to the other courses that were around. So we concentrated a lot on 20th century music and composition, and a lot of theory stuff as well. And then I was just going to see bands all the time. Like a lot of people, I was just, going to see bands 4 or 5 nights a week, and particularly at the Seaview Ballroom. So the Models, the Flowers, all of that brilliant era of 78, 79 and 1980. And I guess I just got the itch that I wanted to play in a band as well. I was a good trumpet player, but I was probably not the sort of like elite Melbourne Symphony Orchestra level. So I was playing and I was studying, but with no firm plan, probably teaching, if anything. I would have done a dip ed and just probably got into that. That's what my dad did, and that's what one of my sisters ended up doing, teaching. But managed to take this, brilliant left turn at Albuquerque. When I was going all of that, going to see band history, I finally went and saw Hunters, who I'd heard all about when I was away at a classical music weekend in Adelaide. And I came back and my friend Mark Birchett told me all about this new band on the scene, Hunters and Collectors. Went and saw them at the Oxford, went and kind of spruiked myself a bit if you ever needed a trumpet player, and eventually I turned up at the Seaview Ballroom in August '81, and they were supporting The Cure. And I kind of had one song to play, and I tracked down Bryce Perrin, who was in a band called Equal Local, who was kind of one of their horn players at the time, and he showed me what to play, and I jumped up and played, and kind of never looked back really. From there, I kind of started organising, writing horn lines and doing arranging. I kind of got other horn players that I'd played in the orchestras with, particularly Jeremy Smith and Michael Waters, who ended up being the long time, Hunters members as well. So that was the beginning, which was 1981, and it's just kind of gone on from there really. And post Hunters, it's just been, lots of everything really. My own stuff, playing with other bands, teaching. It's a rich and varied musical life so far.
Hey Matt, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Tarina, as always.
So what's been happening?
Well, very exciting news. The Dogs Bar had some live streaming gigs over the weekend. Friday night with Jack Howard, and then Saturday, Andy Kentler, the Large Number 12s, and yesterday, Sunday, Peptides and Kim Volkman.
Mm. And how was that?
It was great. As I said, streaming gigs have been a bit of a regular thing over this time. Sometimes you see something on stage, it's just a camera phone or a camera on a laptop and just one shot of someone. But this was actually a really amazing production. They had I think it was about 2 or 3 cameras. You had various shots of different band members, so it wasn't just the standard one shot of the band the whole time. So, and the sound sounded amazing as well. Like again, if you're doing it off a laptop or of a phone, the sound could be but the production value was amazing. So
yeah, it brought back some of that quality that we've been missing.
Oh yeah, seeing Fred dance, it just felt like I was there,
Yeah,
and right in front of the camera,
sitting on your couch at home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you think that this live streaming is going to continue after this pandemic when things sort of look normal?
Yeah, I could say that. I mean, Dave Graney and Claire Moore, who I've mentioned before, have been doing gigs, but they've been doing things like Sunday. They did one at 7 a.m. and that was designed for their fans in the US. And they've also done gigs like Saturday night at 11 o'clock, which is designed for their UK fans. So it's a more reasonable time for them. And if you can reach an audience that, say, you don't go overseas or you can't tour and you've got a bit of a fan base, then you can just bring it to them on their phone or in their living room, then I think it's definitely something that will keep going, and hopefully you can their fans overseas that can't see them regularly can see them, and they can even reach a new audience.
Yeah, I guess
and also get paid.
Yeah, that's another important thing. It's like the pros and cons, I guess. We're going to be limited for international acts, and same for other countries in terms of seeing acts from Australia. So having the streaming is an awesome outlet for them to stay connected with, international fans. But then there's also the risk of if a lot of local stuff is heavily streamed, how are the musicians making money there? What are your views on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. And one thing about the streaming is that a lot of places, I think, like stage it, you have to actually pay to get in, which I think is a great thing. And I think living around St Kilda, we're very lucky to have so many free live venues. But one thing about watching the streaming where you have to pay to get in, or even with Dogs Bar, you could watch it for free, but you could make a donation or really pay for, well, not really make a donation, just pay for the band's services. And hopefully that's something that we can, I think about 130 people watching the Dogs Bar performance on average, so hopefully those numbers will stay when the gigs come back, and hopefully people get in the habit of actually paying for gigs again, because it's a service, people paying their musicians giving their time, so hopefully they get an honest day's work, which they deserve.
Just even a small donation, obviously, it's not necessarily going to fix all the issues that musicians and venues have had during this isolation, but something small, it always helps, doesn't it?
Oh, so any amount's fine. I mean, just throw the bucket around, $5, really go, if everyone pays it, like I said, 150 people, 100 watching on Dogs Bar live stream, if everyone just donates $5, it goes a long way.
Thanks, Matt, for joining us.
Thanks as always, Tarina.
And we'll see you next time.
Look forward to it as always.
That's all we have for this week. If you want to get in contact with us, send us an email at ideas@studioemedia.com.au. Thanks for watching. See you next time.